thank you for agreeing to do this, because no pressure that you have all these people in the room listening as well. It's, but it is, you know, it is a special thing to be courageous enough to share your story. And just in interacting with you in the training, and then the just quick 2 minutes that we just had here was very special. And I feel like I have a little bit of a sense of who you are and your personality. But let's start with how you ended up at Emmanuel, because I know so far you started in Pennsylvania and then you were in Ohio. I've learned that much just here. But so how in the world did you end up here?
I married a Lutheran.
Okay.
And, you know,
I did that too, Miss Edie.
Right. So that's how we ended up. We first came to Florida to Marco Island.
Okay.
And there the Lutheran church was Missouri Lutheran.
Okay.
And David and I both loved to sing, and the hymns in the Missouri Lutheran, I'm sorry, are dirges. And so we went to the Methodist church where we had some lively music and sang in the choir and so forth. So, but then when we moved to Naples, we decided that we would look for a Lutheran church, and Emmanuel was it. That's the only one we went to.
Okay. You know, okay. So for training purposes, I neglected to set this up because we had already been talking.
Yes.
So I want to go back and do that for everybody since we're training. So so I did thank Miss Edie. That's important as a part of the training. So my goal for our conversation today is to learn who you are, to learn your story and how Emmanuel has impacted your life. And as I write your story, I want to make sure that I capture how I feel as we talk. The feeling that you give me as you share your story is the feeling I want other people to have when they read your story. And so that is what I'm going to be working really hard to do. If there's anything that you share that you regret sharing, you know, you say, oh, I really shouldn't have put that out there into the world, you just let me know and I will mark right through it and it will not go in the story, and I'll be sure to honor that. Okay. Okay. So, all right. So I hear already that music is important to you.
Very.
Okay. Why? Is there a reason that music is important to you? Tell me about that.
I think it started in the 4th grade.
Okay.
My teacher, of course, there were only 10 of us in that grade, and she picked out what we excelled in, and music was for me. And I had to do twice as much in music as anybody else because she wanted me to excel in that, and somebody else excelled in math. And so I guess it started with Mrs. Corliss, and she also was invited to our wedding.
Oh,
so she was a very special teacher.
That is awesome. So, so as you came into Emmanuel for the first time, was music, I mean, did you connect with the music?
I think so.
Okay.
And the preaching.
Okay.
I think we came almost at the same time as Steve.
Okay.
And, you know, we felt that we were hearing the word of God, and but the music, of course, was very important to us. And I think we joined choir very shortly thereafter. Okay.
And how long ago was that? Because I'm not from here.
We moved to Naples in 2002.
Okay, so you've been here for a while.
19 years.
Okay. So when you think about where you were in 2002, coming in for the first time into a congregation, you clearly have a congregational background. You have a faith background. What were you hoping for?
Well, hoping to find fellowship.
Okay.
And it just, since you asked that, I remember like one of the first Sundays here when we said hi to Frank, and he found out that we lived in the vineyards. First thing he did was introduce me to Donna Fields. She said, oh, she's in the vineyards.
Okay.
And so that was a good connection.
Okay.
That we had a neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. Somebody immediately sought out a way to help you make another connection.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And has that been a lasting connection?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so music was important. Preaching was important.
Bible study was important.
Bible study was important. Okay.
We got in on the first small groups.
Okay.
They were just starting, and we, of course, had been in small groups in Ohio and wanted to be in one. And we were in it for a long time, and we kind of dissipated to being social. But for years, it was a good Bible study.
A good Bible study for that. Good. Okay. So tell me what you're into now, 19 years later.
Well, we were into choir.
Okay.
My husband and I, we were into our nursing home ministry, and we've always had, well, we had a nursing home ministry in Ohio as well. And of course, COVID shut that down, unfortunately.
Is that where you, can I just ask a quick question? So then tell me what the nursing home ministry is. If I don't know what that is, what is that?
Well, we would go every Monday. To lead worship service, have a little message, and do a lot of singing. You know, I know a whole lot of old hymns, and they all like those.
Thanks to that teacher from before.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And the one thing we always sang, because we found that at first I thought, well, maybe they'll think we're talking down to them, but that wasn't the case. We always sang, Jesus Loves Me. I mean, for years. That was one of the songs we sang.
Yeah. That seems like it's hitting a nerve for you. Yeah. Can you say more about that?
Well, I just miss it so much. Because, you know, we haven't been able to do it. And I had one lady, and I know she may have said it to everybody, I don't know, but she was 103. And a Black lady, and I would lean down to give her a hug after the service, and she would always say, oh, I just love you. And I would just melt. I thought, oh my gosh, you know. And so I miss her hugs.
So it sounds like Miss Edie, just from our conversation just now, but also our conversation before, this had been a big year for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as I told you, today would have been our 59th wedding anniversary. So I am so glad to be here with everybody, because I could not have been alone. So thank you all.
And what is it about this place and these people that is filling that?
Well, they have supported me through all of this, not only financially, but when we could, we had a service here that was live streamed. And eventually I got hugs. We couldn't do that for a while. Have not been able to have people come to the house as much as I would have liked to because of the COVID. But I just felt their love and support, and it was well, I couldn't have done it without it.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just making sure
That's okay.
I got that little note down there. So when you think about the ways that you interact with people here at Emmanuel, and the things that you've learned, what would you say are 3 things you've learned truly from your time being here at Emmanuel?
Well, as I always said, coming from being Evangelical United Brethren, United Methodist, and marrying a Lutheran, one of the things that I've learned and learned to appreciate, not only here, but about being Lutheran, is the sacraments. It was wonderful to have the sacraments every Sunday. You know, I grew up with it maybe 4 times a year. And so that has been, you know, really wonderful. And I just said to, as we were having lunch today and Frank was next to me, I said, Frank, I don't know if I've ever thanked you, because Frank came to my hospital when I had my knee replaced, and I was in rehab, and he came bouncing in and gave me communion right there as I was exercising. And I thought it was wonderful. And was a good testimony to the others exercising. So that was one thing. And I guess just the love that we have, especially for each other in choir, because that's just been such a bonding experience. And let's see, third thing, just fellowship, I guess, you know, and hearing the word of God, you know.
Yeah. And do you have a special way that you feel like you live out your call here at Emmanuel?
Choir, nursing home. David and I were very active in Tuesdays with Emmanuel. That's gone by the wayside. But we were the initiators. We were kind of, as I said, initiating with small groups. And Bible study, you know, we have Bible study at home also.
So it seems like, if I'm listening well, and you tell me if I'm not, okay? But it seems like in 19 years, you came in and you got connected to certain things, and those things have changed and evolved over the years, but in some fashion, even through COVID, to the extent that they could, they've kept you anchored. Oh, is that a fair thing to say?
Oh, that's a very fair thing to say. Yes, yes. Really, without an active living faith, I could not have gone through this last year, because some other things happened too, which have not been pleasant. And my mantra was, the sovereign Lord is my strength. I have said that hundreds of times a day, you know, because I just couldn't have made it without it.
Yeah. And how does God show you that?
Oh, so many ways. I was telling Frank too, I've had so many God winks. I was, you know, upset about coming to church alone, because David and I always came together. And I was out taking a walk. We live in the vineyards. And this man came and stopped and said, I just came here from Minnesota, and said, I see we got new mailboxes. Where do I get keys for the mailbox? So we started to visit, and I said, oh, you're from Minnesota. you need to come to our church. I said, half of the church is from Minnesota or Wisconsin.
Sure.
And he said, well, he'd kind of gotten away from church. He had nursed his wife through ALS and, you know, and he said, but I send a check. Said, all I can remember is at 777 Mooring Line Drive. And I said, that's our church.
Oh.
And he said, I said, and it's open now, but we have to register. And I said, would you like me to register you? And he said, well, I don't do anything with the computer at all. He said, yes, that would be nice. So I registered him to church, and I picked him up. And so that was very nice for, he's now back in Minnesota, but he didn't want to come to church without his wife. And I came to church, but you know, it was awfully nice to have somebody next to me. And now he calls me every Sunday just to check up on me. And he said, I said, I miss going to church with you. He said, we have church here. He's in a retirement center. And he has every other week. So that was a very nice thing. And I certainly think that was a God wink. And the other thing that was just absolutely unbelievable, and I said I could never have gotten through this without a living faith, was I was so worried about our taxes, because David had always done those. And a friend of ours, whom we hadn't heard of from in a couple of years, she said, you know, Edie, she called me and she said, I can't figure out why. She said, I've just been thinking about you and David. Said, you just have come and said, I was going to invite you over for brunch. And I said, oh, Barb, you don't know, David passed. And she just was so upset because she'd been at her home in Michigan and didn't know anything that had happened. So I went over for brunch, and her husband had been a really good friend of ours. We went to Ohio University together, got our master's degree. And he passed a long time ago, but he had brain cancer. He was an accountant. And I knew that he would have gotten Barb a good accountant before he passed. And my husband didn't have that kind of time. So she gave me the name, and she said, now my accountant isn't taking new clients, but her assistant is. And I said, okay. So it went back and forth for a while. And I finally got a hold of Julie. And I told her who I was. I was a friend of Barb. Husband, David Cole. There was just this dead silence on the phone. I said, this wouldn't be the David Cole from Upper Arlington, Ohio. I said, yes. I said, this wouldn't be the David Cole that went to Upper Arlington Lutheran Church. I said, yes. And we said, dead silence. And my skin's crawling now as well as hers. She said, I'm Julie Kime. And she gave me her maiden name, or her married name. She was on the swim team with our daughter. She graduated a year later. Said, I had David in Sunday school, and I think I had you in Sunday school. And I thought, oh, thank you, Lord, because I was so worried that an accountant would rob me blind, you know, and of all the accountants in Naples, I got Julie. Isn't that a God wink? I said, we just said, oh, wow. And so it was really exciting and of course
comforting.
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
You know, I knew I could trust her, and etc.
Yeah.
So between Bob stopping me and then the church helping me with the service, and Jennifer doing all my photos for the program, and Gina doing all these things for me, and Carol, it's just been a real comfort. So anyways, and this is going longer than what.
That's okay.
You didn't know, Mitzie, I was a speech teacher.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So just try and shut me up. I graduated from Otterbein, and we just about 5 years ago celebrated 100 years of the speech department. And they said something about 100 years of communication, and then on the back it said, just try and shut us up.
That is awesome. So very good. I'm gonna pause my interview here for just a second. So you all know Edie, some of you are just meeting for the first time at your table today, which I think is fabulous. Does anybody have any other questions that they would like to ask Edie?
Oh, I got a question. Remember what you said to me the day when you came and visited in our worship service at the very end?
So set it up for us. So you were visiting the community church for the first time?
Well, the first time that it was here, we visited when it was at Pebblebrook. And Jose looked at me and he said, "Oh, Edie, I just love you." And I said, "I've never had that expression from the pulpit." I loved it.
That's great. That's awesome. My husband tells me that from the pulpit all the time. I'm just teasing.
Well, I bet this is the first spring.
I'm teasing. No, that's great. That's great. Good. Okay, well, thank you very much. And so the end of the interview, right? So I'm not exactly sure where or how we're going to use this story, but I do very much appreciate you taking the time and the emotional energy. I know some of that was difficult to share with us, and it is wonderful to hear how connected you are to the ministry. So thank you for that.
Well, this really has been.
Thank you, Edie.
Am I released?
You are. Class dismissed.
Class dismissed. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Yes.
Would you write this up as a narrative or bullet point?
It's always narrative. Yep.
You would write it up as a narrative.
Yep. Yep.
Would we write ours up as a narrative or bullet point?
Always narrative. Yep. Mm-hmm. Always narrative. Yep. Yes, Tom.
This is a training session, right?
Yes, it is.
I hope people really watch your body language because it changed. It changed several times throughout that interview. I mean, you knew when to smile, and at one point I thought you were going to break out in tears. And I'm serious, but your body language propelled that interview.
Well, I'm grateful that you noticed that. That's good.
I think it's important to watch that because the body language and your facial expressions and things when you're interviewing someone can turn the interview one way or another.
That's right. Yeah.
Plus the placement of your chairs. Very important. You were not confronted. You weren't sitting side. You know, this is a very gentle and engaging.
Yeah, and I do think that's important. We call it an interview because one person is asking questions, right? And that's essentially what an interview is. but it really is, you know each other. I mean, if you don't, you will by the time the interview's over, right? And, or at least you have the start of a relationship. But it is really a conversation. And in this case, at Emmanuel, it is shared purpose, right? When I write a story about Emmanuel, I have a relationship with you, but my relationship is different. And we don't have to pretend that it isn't, right? You've brought me here to do something, right? But you all are here because it's part of who you are every day, all the time. And you live and breathe it inside of what you're doing all the time. And so when you are having a conversation with somebody who is a part of your faith community, it is a shared experience and a part of deepening your relationship with each other. Now, I had only met Edie this morning. The interactions that we had, if I might be so bold, Edie, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but the training was an initial deposit into my relationship with Edie. She asked a couple of questions. I was able to answer. She came in needing something this morning because this is a difficult day for her. And you all filled that. And I imagine in some fashion that deposit that you all made was attached to me because I led the presentation, whether she was aware of that or not, right? And so that already happened. But we also had a moment before the interview where she came up and kind of said, so like, here we go, sort of, right? And then she shared an intimate moment with me, and she made herself vulnerable. And so if I am cold and I don't care about anything other than just getting my story, then I'm not gonna get the story. That is a withdrawal. Like how I approach can be a withdrawal, and people will shut down. They will feel that. Now, I don't think about that. I just really like hearing people's stories. And so when you go into it, I would say if you are nervous about this, you should be mindful of that. Because if you are nervous about it, it can be a deposit to say to the person, you know what, this is the first time I've interviewed somebody. And so it would be, so we're going to do this together. We're going to learn this together, right? And then that way, because they want you to succeed, and you want to succeed, and you want to get their story. And so then because you are in a community with them, you are setting each other up with the same goal when you do that. Other observations. So when's our next interview?
Our next interview.
That one took a little bit longer.
Our next few interviews in T-4 minutes.
4 minutes. Okay. So what changes would you pick out of Miss Edie's story? What did you hear that was a change? Or an agent of change? Like, how would you identify?
I think Emmanuel became a real source of comfort for her.
Okay.
That was really pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And having known both her and her husband, I can relate to that.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Also, I think Emmanuel met her spiritual needs at the very beginning. That's why she, ended up coming here.
Mm-hmm.
Being met.
Yeah. She is unusual for some congregations, and that she had expectations about what church was supposed to be before she got here, right? And not everybody has that. Some people don't have that. Some people do. But that doesn't mean, even though she had expectations, that there wasn't a need that needed to be met, right?
Or an avenue for her to express her gifts.
Yes.
Which, again, was the nursing home story.
Yes.
So Emmanuel allowed her to use her gifts and there she was a blessing to those.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think what you're going to find in your stories, and I think this goes back to the kind of the 4 pillars that you all have been working on that directly relate to your mission, which is worship, fellowship, service, and education. Right? Did I get them right?
And you.
And what?
Worship, love, learn, serve, and give.
Okay. I don't
That's
think that
the strategy is
the strategy. That's what I was talking about that you mentioned this morning. So that it becomes both and. So in every story, it becomes, I needed this thing, this need was met, and now I'm going, right? And now I'm going. And the after the change that we're looking for, we have the before the change and the after the change. The after change is that they go. And that is a critical part of the story. We come in wanting something and then we end up going, right? We switch from wanting to going. And that's important because what Edie did is she met a neighbor and she found a sense of belonging here. And it was important to her from her own character that her neighbor have that same sense of belonging. And so not only did she invite, she registered. I mean, like, that's a step, right? That's an intentional step that some of the world wouldn't take because I don't have time for you. But her faith being nurtured along the way has created a space where she made time to do that and to connect that. And now, even though her new friend is back in Minnesota, there's still a connection, there's still belonging, and there is connection between them. But the connection between them also was a connection to remind him that God is still a part of his life, that God is still present. And he's not by himself.
Edie's the reason I'm here.
There you go. There you go.
She also mentioned a number of our ministries.
And you're not from Minnesota or Wisconsin.
Hang on, Bob. Bob, hang on 1 second.
Here.
She's grown.
All right.
Yeah, she's expanded her geography.
Bob is another neighbor.
Bob, you're saying, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to make the point that she mentioned in her own experiences a number of our very important ministries that are here for anyone who's coming. It's an area I think we have to emphasize.
So the fact that there are so many broad ministries to participate in.
Mm-hmm.
And building on Bob's comment, my takeaway was that over the 18 plus years, you didn't need to move. The church stayed with you and continued to provide you what you needed. Mm-hmm. And you provided the church what it needed because you and David were constantly here.
She became a player.
Yeah.
Not just a
exactly, not just a participant.
Yeah. Yep. Synergies. Yeah. Because, when you mentioned something in the very beginning this morning, the workshop, that people come to church because they are looking for something.
Yes, they do.
And that really triggers me because for me being a pastor, I say, hey, people always here are after the fish and loaves, but hello, it is up to us to find out what people need. And I don't know, work it out with them, the thing, because it's fish and loaves, okay, I'm gonna give you this, but I think this is an amazing opportunity to connect, because once you have people, you help them to discover what they are here for, what are hopeful, to find out something. And you mentioned really well when you asked that question to Edie, and Edie said fellowship. Yeah, it is maybe the fish, the loaves, whatever you want to call it, but it is what it is. So we are, yeah, to help that person.
Did you have a question?
Not a question as much as maybe an observation. Edie comes from some pretty vibrant congregational background. In other words, they've experienced some wonderful congregations doing all sorts of things. That's not always normal.
No.
When someone comes, let's say with high expectations, I mean, and the package she was expecting of ministry was quite broad when she talked. I mean, and she could have probably gone into greater detail into some of these. I mean, she's a speech coach, so sermons are very important, but it can't be just good speaking. It has to be spiritually a lot of content, because again, that's what they're used to. They're used to. And then they went into education and fellowship and music. And as she kept going on, many people will spend years church shopping.
Yes.
To find the right fit. So there was something about her story. They came here and it was like a little miracle there, given how some of us have looked for churches and couldn't find them for years, or compromised, and you know, to give up. They seemed to hit it right off. I mean, they came, this is our place, and then almost immediately flipped to leadership rather than just let's say a consumer of music or a consumer of Bible study or a consumer of whatever, my fellowship, you know. She could have gone, she's had so many leadership roles with David. And so that was, I just thought, you don't hear that story very often.
Right. Well, and I think also too, Pastor Rick, I'd like to take a little deeper dive into that, because what you're going to find, so this model was developed out of an institutional setting, not a congregational setting. And so it is almost a consumer concept that you are writing the stories of those you serve. And if it's a social ministry organization, you do have this hope that they get what they need and life continues and they don't need it anymore, right? And so they move on, or they have an experience that forms their faith or develops leaders through some program that they are a part of, and then they move on. The difference when this is applied in a congregation is that we don't want them moving on. We want them staying, right? We want them to find that this is their place and this is where they belong. And so I do really value, and I think we will be paying very close attention to this, as I will be as I read your stories, of how the flip happens to leadership. Because, and for some people, this is what I want to caution you about, okay? And this comes from, I gotta stand up. This comes from, am I gonna mess you up if I am gonna mess you up?
No, that's all right.
This comes from a trauma-informed place, okay? So what I'm about to say, how I wanna go with this, comes from a trauma-informed place as opposed to a consumer-based place, okay? Everybody who comes here is coming with a different need and they're coming with a different background, and they're coming with a different story. And some people's story or need or trauma or whatever can mean they can make that flip quickly. And for some, it means we gotta walk alongside a lot longer, okay? I have 2 kids, perfect example. I have 2 kids. One 17-year-old always does the right thing, always does exactly what I ask her to do, has never given me any problems, ever. Except when she started to learn to drive, and I realized there's something going on here. She has OCD. And driving after I realized it, after we got it figured out, I was like, oh, yeah. 4th grade makes a lot more sense. 6th grade makes a lot more sense, because I didn't realize that's what was going on. We were navigating some behaviors and some anxiety and some feelings, but I had not connected that there. So now she's, you know, she's in therapy, she's doing what she needs to do. And now I long for her to do something to defy me, right? Like it's a different, I have to parent her very different than my son, who also has anxiety, but it's from ADHD, because he can see Tetris brain 5 steps down and he knows what's coming. And he is impulsive and always doing, like, I have to watch him. He disappears, he whatever. They're completely different children who came from the exact same family who need very different things. And so as you're listening to the stories, your people need different things. Edie didn't need just one thing. There were a couple things inside of there. And so it's really critical as you're listening to simply receive. Don't look for where they went to be the leader. They might not have gotten there. They might not be there yet. They might still be on the, I need to come in the line and get food every day still, right? They might be in a different place. And so when we talk about honoring their story, that's what we're talking about, that people come from different places and their stories are going to be different. What is not different is that through the multiple ministries that you offer here, that God is greeting them and meeting them and giving them what they need. Okay? And that is what we're looking for in the story.